welcome to Fairly Awesome Podcast, episode number 3. If you grew up in the 90s, Blind Melon taught you that 3 is the magic number, so I think we're in for a pretty good show here. My name's Staughton Wade. I'll be your host today, along with Ryan McDowell, Chris Keene, and rookie Josh Bushing joining us for his first Fairly Awesome Podcast. And since you're new to the podcast, Josh, we're going to make you go first, so all the pressure's on you.
Oh, God. Cruel punishment. Don't mess it up.
Right. So I know you got crowdfunding. Tell us all about it.
So, crowdfunding. I thought it was interesting that there's a huge amount of crowdfunding stuff going on right now. People are, like, legitimate producers, people that have been in fields before, are starting to go to their fan base now and collect money for projects. So, you've got all kinds of different things being crowdsourced. Movies. Spike Lee's got it. I think he met his Kickstarter goal, and he's funding for a movie. There's a couple of video game people that have put some stuff together.
Double Fine, one of them.
What?
Double Fine, the company. Double Fine went in and did one for a game.
Yeah. There's Lord British did Shrouds of the Avatar. I'm actually a backer for that, so that's kind of cool. There's a bunch of other things. I've got some props here for what I've actually kickstarted and what has been sent to me, as far as stuff that I've backed.
Why don't you explain to us what you have here for our audio listeners?
Okay, so a couple of them are just kind of really specific gizmo gadget type things. Like this is a mini micro SD card reader that's got a USB, like a mini B port, and it plugs into the bottom of your phone, and then you can put an SD card slot in. And if it's Android based, you'll be able to have extra storage for that. So that was kind of cool. That actually just came about a week ago. This other one is a Bluetooth dock. It's got a 30-pin Apple connector, and it plugs right into it, and it sets it up so that I can use a regular phone with Bluetooth or whatever, or my iPad to go straight to the dock and listen to music. I actually got this just because of work. We have a little speaker dock that I could play some music on or whatever, so I set that up.
Do you think you get good value for money out of these things? If these were hanging on the rack at, say, Best Buy, at the value you kickstarted them off at?
Well, this one I think was like 20.
Your micro SD guy?
Yeah, so this one was 20, and I think that's probably about perfect for something like this. They probably sell this for 30, I imagine, at Best Buy.
Sure.
I think I got 2 of these. I got a white one and a black one, and I think I spent $50 for it, both, because that was one of the early backers.
So it seems about right.
Yeah, I think so. The other one is the Ouya, the Android-based game console.
Micro console, yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really tiny, actually.
Did you actually back that?
I did. I backed this, and I've been so swamped and busy, I have not even, aside from opening it up, I have not even done anything with it.
Wow, look at all the protective wrap.
Still on there.
Yeah,
that's
impressive.
Yeah, I know. But actually, it's kind of nice. They didn't skimp, man. They actually have legitimate stuff in here. HDMI cable?
Legitimate stuff, as opposed to just
illegitimate.
It's 2 cans in a stick.
Seriously, like you had to buy the Xbox.
Sony and Nintendo got together and had an illegitimate child.
Oh.
Okay, I'll give you the point on that. Yeah, it didn't come with the HDMI cable.
No, the first Xbox, not even close. You had to buy the redonk version, the Elite or whatever, in order to get an HDMI
So
cable.
$100 on this?
Yeah, I think that's what I spent.
Okay, and you've obviously gotten your value's worth since you haven't touched it.
Right, that might be a good point. That might be, like when I get time.
Okay, so this being the biggest Kickstarter that you've kind of pitched in for,
right?
What kind of expectations do you have for longevity of these devices? I mean, do you think
certain things like this are harder to define simply because
you mean the micro
niche.
SD card reader?
Well, like these two both together, they're very
niche,
niche type things. Whereas this is a little bit like trying to get a game console that's a little different.
You're talking longevity as in, like, how long there'll be a product, or, like, product lifespan as in how long do I expect that micro SD reader to last before I hit my phone funny and snap it?
If you're getting tech or a product back from a Kickstarter, you are immediately exposing yourself to Gen 1 tech. Right? And even from established producers, they can make mistakes on Gen 1 tech.
They've even, not to cut you off, they've even stated this. I've gotten a couple of emails, like some people have said, that this is tight, or there's like a loose part or something, and that they've, for their next iterations of selling these, they want to know the feedback. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm beta testing on some of this stuff? Yeah, absolutely. I think, but the idea of getting it before everybody else there's kind of a nicety there. It's just, you're a part of something then. And that you've actually, with your money and donations, basically, you're going to get something back. It's a pledge. But, and they have reward cycles and certain things, especially with Kickstarter. And some of the other crowdfunding sources, places might be different. But something like this, I gave them money. They produced a product. And I feel like I've, been a part of that.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting stuff, right? Because in normal terms, if we didn't have Kickstarting stuff, and you wanted to be the first one with an OLED TV, my God, you'd have to pay through the nose because they already had to do all the research and development. They didn't get crowdsourced development by people that really want this product. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, maybe even an OLED Kickstarter would be very expensive, but I feel like some of this stuff with Kickstarter or some of the other sites that do the same thing, you end up getting pretty good deals. I mean, to get this stuff for even what it would be at Best Buy, I think is good. You're not paying premium to be one of the first to have one of these devices. Right. I mean, in some cases, you're getting it, a pretty good deal by being one of the first to put in money on it.
Mm-hmm. But so these are obviously three things that you've contributed and you've seen the benefit from. Have Chris or Ryan? Have you? Because I have not. I've not contributed any money. Have you guys contributed money to anything? Any crowdfunding?
I have not backed anything. There have been a handful that I've followed, but I haven't actually backed anything.
Okay.
That's exactly the same thing. I if I found the right one, I think I would back it, but there hasn't been anything yet that I'm like, wow, that's so badass, I want to back that.
Okay. So then let's say, what is the requirement for it to be something that you would back? Because obviously your requirement is, Josh, is basically you want to be almost a beta tester for technology that you will use. Right. And you like the idea of having it quickly and having it first. Yep. And that either doesn't appeal to you guys or just none of this stuff. The Ouya is, it's a little bit niche-esque in a way. So
it's whether you believe, like for me, the Ouya was an interesting one. And I looked at it and I did a lot of research on it. Like, are we at the precipice or whatever of a big step forward in gaming? Because if we can get in with a $100 console and suddenly you get the whole part of the draw with the Ouya specifically, before we get too far off of the kickstarting, but part of the draw was that the software is very, very cheap. Right now with consoles, you're talking about paying $50 to $60 a game. With the primary consoles, it is $60 a game. Right. And all the peripherals are ridiculously expensive. There's the whole cycle of how you get games released, but you get AAAs, right?
Right.
Ouya, unlikely to probably see AAAs. But maybe if it's big enough, right? So
they've got one, I think they had one that was just a Final Fantasy III spin-off type thing or something. That's about it. And they've had issues, all kinds of things here and there too, that I don't know if it makes them legitimate in that same realm as what they were hoping to be. Maybe at this time. Now, do they have enough of a backing for their fans or people that have supported them in the past? Maybe going forward for a different generation, or make improvements on it. I don't know.
And I'll say the reasons that I haven't actually pushed in money on any of this stuff is more that either I find something that does what I want to do and it's already proven versus a Kickstarter for somebody else to do kind of the same thing. Mm-hmm. Or with the specific example of the Ouya, it's not where I think gaming is going.
Beyond
in my take,
right. Beyond just gaming, is this going to be something that we actually see more of? Crowdfunding in general. Chris?
I think you're really going to see a lot more crowdfunding, because with crowdfunding, what you've got is you pretty much have your base set. So, if you're going to record an album or you're going to produce a video game, stuff that doesn't require hardware, lock-in, it's much easier to say, okay, it's going to cost me $10,000 to make this album. I'll give you a copy of it if you kick in $5. Especially if you've got an established base. So, for music artists that are just starting up that want to get their first album out there without having to pay, a full studio, or they just want their studio fee paid for them without being beholden to a label, this is great. I mean, especially like if you've got a band that's, got kind of a following, you kind of already got people that'll say, hey, I really want to hear this album mastered and sounding awesome.
Yeah,
sure. Or $10, $20.
Yeah, sure. Or in that same vein, if you've got amateur filmmakers that have a script that sounds really good, and you're like, man, I really want to see that into a movie. I'll put in my $5 or $10. And the interesting thing is that it's not a universal level, right? A lot of people are getting creative about the different levels you can get and the different levels of what you get back.
Right.
I've seen some of the films where they're pretty interesting plot lines, and if you were willing to pitch in enough, like in some cases $1,500 to $2,000, you get to sit down and have a phone conversation with the guys making the movies, and you might even get to, they'll hear you out on your ideas for, hey, I think you should do this. Well, you're pitching in some of the money, so you kind of get a say in that. I think that's kind of cool stuff. And so I do think that this is a legitimate way of getting some of the products that you want to show your support for. As opposed to now, these guys have to go pitch it to, before all of this, recording industries is a very good example, because before this, you had to go pitch it to the wrong people. You weren't pitching it to your audience. You know what I mean? You were pitching it to some guy that was making money and got kickbacks and all sorts of other stuff, right?
For royalties and everything else.
Right, exactly.
You had to sell it to some guy who was going to determine whether or not other people liked your music, when you already knew there were all these people that liked your music. Why do you need to convince somebody else that your music is awesome? And you
can take your path with it. If you have a plan for that, if you take your path with it, you can use Kickstarter to sort of do that. And I think I expect, if they didn't deliver on this, you had faith that you were getting your money back, right? Because they've abandoned Kickstarters before for not meeting their deadline.
Well, here's the thing. If they've not, or didn't think that they were going to, I had one so far that did not make its deadline. Nothing was charged from my account or anything, so I didn't have to worry about anything if they didn't make it.
Right, so the reasons I haven't put in is not because I fear that it's just a money sink. I throw money at this and then they go off with it and somebody buys a Ferrari or whatever. That's not the reason I haven't put in money to a Kickstarter yet. I don't spend a ton of time on Kickstarter looking through the different Kickstarters that are there. I hear about a couple and I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. And I'll go through and look at them. And every time I hear about an interesting Kickstarter, I'll spend maybe 15 minutes on the site looking at different ones that appeal to my interests. I will say that LucasArts or Disney, if you ever get a Kickstarter for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, my money is in.
Fortunately, they don't need the money, right?
They don't.
But they should.
If they did some of this stuff, if they did Stanley doesn't need the money to do that.
They should use it just to gain audience reaction, honestly. To know, we're going to kickstart $1 million for X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, give us $30 and you get get in on the beta for it. Because, there would be a ton of people.
Or you free get the upgrade so when the game comes out or whatever, if you, let's say your Kickstart is $60 in, you get the VIP,
premium edition.
Right, the premium edition.
There was a lot like that with Lord British's Shroud of the Avatar or something like that. Anyhow, and they had various levels, and it went all the way to 10,000. You got a mansion house in this MMO world that he's creating for
interesting.
Yeah, and it got up there, and then he went on beyond that too. He's got a separate site set up. You link your Kickstarter account to, and then you can advance your funding on that site as well and get more things. So if you put in $60 in the Kickstarter and then wanted to go to the $120 level, just throw in another $60 from PayPal or whatever, and they'll bump you up to the next level.
Now, what's the motivation behind that? Is it because Kickstarter gets a percentage of the...
It is, and then you only have so much time frame to set up.
Otherwise, it's done. It's like an auction, sort of.
Right. You can't contribute more after the Kickstarter's over.
I guess.
In Kickstarter. So you have to do it
Kickstarter
through PayPal
is the door to get in.
Right. He sets it up from there and then had a huge awesome website.
I would say that they've got it broken out into enough genres, and their search works well. If you haven't been out to Kickstarter, I would say definitely go out there and check it out, because it's pretty easy to navigate through some of the more popular ones, and you're like, man, this is really cool.
Yeah.
There've been a couple of things for like GoPro cameras and things like that I'm like, that is really one-off and kind of unique, and nobody's out there making it. There were a couple I almost bought in on that.
See, for me personally, like Mighty Number 9, that's probably going to be a huge one, where basically the guy that made Mega Man is going to make Mega Man the way Mega Man should have been when they started screwing it up, basically, when he got out of it. He's got credibility behind him.
Right.
One of the ones, but at the same time, I'm not really going to do that in advance, because I don't trust the quality, even when somebody has that kind of credibility behind him. I just don't trust that it's going to come out as a quality game.
Gotcha.
Like, can you imagine the rage if Duke Nukem Forever had been a Kickstarter? That would have been. I mean, and there hasn't been that kind of
legitimate point.
There hasn't been that kind of high profile fail yet.
Yeah, we'll see with this. I mean, I so far I think he's still got like 8 or 10 days left or something for his Kickstarter, and he's up to almost like $2 million.
Yeah, I mean, he's got the credibility to pull it off, right? So I think that one of my favorite Kickstarters was How Do I Land, which was a comedian basically asked for $7,000, not quite $7,000, to have a skywriter go up into the skies above downtown Los Angeles and write whatever people that contributed to the Kickstarter wanted. And what they chose was for the skywriter to write How Do I Land. So, right above the skies of downtown, and then he hosted a party, like, at the top of one of the skyscrapers, so people could watch How Do I Land appear up in the sky. That's the kind of stuff, like, because I'm kind of, we always say that I don't like vandalism unless it's creative.
Right.
Like, so, when somebody does something funny, when somebody takes a stop sign and writes, collaborate and listen underneath it, I'm like, yes, yeah, it's just like, yeah, exactly, or in the name of love. Either way, so that's the kind of stuff I can get behind. So that's the kind of thing that, because there's almost an immediate payback, you know exactly what's going to happen. And unlike the technology stuff, you're talking about how with your SD card reader, people were saying, well, this doesn't quite work right, and that doesn't quite work right. Well, that would make me a little bit mad if I got something that I didn't know the reliability on, but something I could get instant feedback on,
right,
or instant gratification.
But the device works for him, right?
I don't know. Is it out of its box yet? Have you tried it? Okay.
Okay, but the point is, there might be some nuances, and you take some of that when you get into these Kickstarters. It may not be everything you expect.
You're a product tester in a lot of ways. You're paying, but you're paying to be the beta.
You know, I've been following these kinds of things, but I think that's the beauty of it, is that, I like technology. I don't mind messing with things, and like there's a couple of things that I funded or whatever that, particularly this watch that's still, I think, on Kickstarter. It's the Omate True Smart, and it just looks cool. And it's going to do all kinds of whiz-bangery and gadgety type stuff. And I think
whiz-bangery.
Yes. Whiz-bangery.
Yeah.
It's guaranteed in the Kickstarter. Whiz-bangery.
I get
I would
my jollies off on that kind of stuff. Whiz-bangery.
So you're a bleeding edge guy.
I really like just tech and toys and messing with fun things that do fun things.
And that's kind of been one of my limiters in getting into Kickstarter is as much as I would like to be a bleeding edge tech guy, I'm not. I don't want the latest phone because it comes with its own inherent problems of having the latest technology. Something doesn't work, and then you have to figure out what's wrong with it. Has anybody else had the problem? How do you get it fixed after the fact? So I don't mind stuff being out for a little while.
That's weird too, because there's a lot of people like talking about the next gen consoles coming out, and I didn't buy into the first Xbox or Xbox 360 until way later, and they had all kinds of problems with the first one.
Yeah, I didn't
just Red Wings of Death.
I think Xbox 360 had hardware problems.
Oh my! Oh my!
We are getting so trolled right now in the comments and whatnot.
No, actually, I was gonna say the first Xbox 360 I bought was shortly after Halo 3 came out, and then when I needed a replacement, I attempted to kill my Xbox 360 by jamming the fans in the back, and it would not die. So I had to find another way to kill it. But the other thing is,
Built like a Dodge.
Kind of disposable income. As much as I'd like to throw $5 or $10 at something, having to justify throwing $5 or $10 at something that's, this stupid is more work than I really want to put into it. Because there have been several things, a lot of games you were talking about, whatever the Mega Man...
Mighty Number 9.
Mighty Number 9. Al Lowe kickstarted a reboot of Leisure Suit Larry. Nice. Which I loved every single one of those games. And, I watched that Kickstarter go, and it kind of did take a long time. I think one of the traps people get into is they set promise dates on the Kickstarters and then miss them. And as long as you keep people informed, I don't think many people care.
This was huge with a misstep with that. They had trouble with all kinds of shipping problems.
What was...
For Ouya, yeah. Because here, mine was the special brown edition, and then they decided that they were going to craft those.
The brown note edition. Let me just...
Yeah, right.
Put that away.
Craft after they made all the regular ones, and people were like, what? We backed more money. Why would you do that? And
why are these not made first?
Yeah, why weren't these made first and numbered and everything else? And they were like, I think there was some missteps there where they weren't sure what to do. And I think they met some of their stuff, but to get back at people that thought that they were wrong or felt that they were wrong because the shelves at Best Buy had Ouyas before Kickstarter backers did, they credited everybody's account with $13.37. So that's like, here, buy into it, and we've given you guys some extra cash. Some leap money. Yeah, to help. Now, I mean, does it go the extra distance to fix problems with people's, issues with either shipping or not getting their stuff or it doesn't work? Or, I don't know.
You mentioned the reboot of Leisure Suit Larry, and you were okay with that. You're happy about that.
I enjoyed the games. Actually, the first game had been remade once already into a VGA version that was much cleaner, and this one was another version that was much cleaner.
An SVGA version?
An SVGA version, before we move on too far here. But I think the thing that interested me is what they were doing with it. It wasn't so much just to remake the game. It was Al Lowe was involved and wanted to make the game. He wanted to fix the mistakes he made in the first game. Seeing, what he wanted to do different and put that in a game that, people that enjoyed the series could contribute towards.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Double Fine adventure, I think they call it, is Bronze, unless it's like Bronze Age now, is the name of the game?
Yeah.
That's still not out yet. And the Kickstarter finished earlier this year, something like that, last year, middle last year, something like that.
But I mean, game development.
Well, I funded this in August of last year, and I just got it, I don't know, maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah, game development, they got a buttload of money, so they went above and beyond what they were originally going to do. Mm-hmm. But what you run into is, with like the Double Fine and with Leisure Suit Larry, is these guys were established when, we were kids, or when our parents were, our age. The guy behind the Double Fine, Tim...
Okay, Tim from Double Fine.
Yeah, Tim from Double Fine. In part responsible for Curse of Monkey Island and Day of the Tentacle. Have you ever played any of those games?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So you kind of come into it with almost a guarantee that this game is probably going to be really, really good. So it almost kind of says, it's fine to throw money at this because you're pretty much guaranteed to get a decent product. Now, when are you actually going to get that product? Well, that's kind of up in the air and depends on how long the game takes to make.
But not charged until you get a deliverable, right?
No. It's charged when the funding ends. So, I got charged for this back in August of 2012.
Oh, I see.
And I didn't get it until, end of May, early June or something. I think it was right when I was getting ready to move or whatever. So.
Yeah. So I think that kind of helps some of the Kickstarters is when there is an established, when there is an established base, for people that want to see games like this made. People that want to see Mega Man done the right way are willing to pay to see Mega Man done the right way.
So, okay, and I'm just going to completely just kill our Kickstarter conversation here and go off when we were talking about Leisure Suit Larry and reboots. And recently, it was revealed that there is a pretty serious, in the works process of rebooting Stargate. Stargate the movie, not the series, because basically they made the movie and then they made the series totally separately, totally different guy, some of the same people, but not all the same people. And then they went off in a different direction than maybe was originally intended. And someone here, Josh, was a little bit rage-filled about that because Stargate is a great show and has created a great universe and it has a huge, massive history. And it got me thinking because we, in the previous episode, really just went off on Ben Affleck Batman to the just watch it. We spent 20 minutes basically just bashflecking. And so now I'm at the point where after I got that all out of my system, I thought, how many things have been rebooted? We all loved the Dark Knight, but that was a reboot. I mean, that was a reboot of Batman, and Batman, the original Michael Keaton, was either a reboot or a remake of 1960s Batman. So
more of a TV show. Let's
start there. Let's get some ground rules. Let's each of us just go around the table real quick and define what a reboot is and maybe what a remake is or reimagining. So, Chris, let's start with you.
I'm gonna say that there are three different categories. There's the remake, complete remake, where pretty much a movie is almost totally exactly like the original, scene for scene. There is the reboot / reimagining, where a movie involves some of the same characters, but is a different story or goes off on a different tangent from the original. So, the newer Star Trek is an example of a reboot / reimagining. It involves some of the same characters, but they threw in some time travel to do whatever they wanted to do with it. The third is actually, I'm going to call it repatriation. That's not quite the right word for it, but these are movies that are remade that were not originally U.S. movies. So movies like Girl with the Dragon Tattoo or Let the Right One In. These were originally made in Europe somewhere. U.S. took them. Some of them not even, Bangkok Dangerous. Less than 2 years later, they remade that movie with Nick Cage in it.
Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was like 2 years.
Yeah, again, hardly any time between these two movies that they were like, you know what, people don't like reading subtitles. We should just make it in English and be done with it.
So, Josh, do you agree with those categories, or would you kind of redefine them?
No, I kind of agree with that. That makes more sense. It's interesting, repatriation. I guess I didn't realize that the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was redone. Now, is it scene by scene redone?
I don't know. I've not actually seen...
I disagree, actually, with putting that in that category because it's a book.
Oh, okay.
And it was just one was done in Sweden, one was done in America. But again, that's a totally different argument than this.
But what if the book is Swedish and the movie's Swedish?
Well, the book was...
then it's extra Swedish.
So then, would you like my Swedish meatballs?
Okay, so then Ryan, go ahead and then add this in. Is every new James Bond a reboot?
No. You mean each new actor?
Each new actor.
No.
Okay.
It's a continuation, and that's why I don't think that each Batman either was a reboot. Like if you look at Keaton to Val Kilmer to George Clooney, that I'm going to say that followed the same vein, right?
First off, after slamming your head into the table a few times.
Right. Versus Batman Begins, Dark Knight, that was a reboot. That was a legitimate reboot.
Okay. Is it because of the tone?
Yes. There was a vision set forward that they weren't just continuing it. You know what I mean? They were starting over, retelling the story. Spider-Man has this happen, right? So the ones with Toby, right? That was.
Oh my God! There's a Roots
you
joke.
You said Toby, and all of us went Roots.
Right. So that was a reboot of Spider-Man because they retold the story from its origin, assuming that you hadn't seen anyone before. Now, the Batman story, when you switched out over to Val Kilmer and when you switched out over to George Clooney, they didn't retell the story with him and Joker, right? They just let it go. They just continued the process. It was, other than taking really neon and
That's the Schumacher
horrible one
or the Schumacher special. We should call that
Schumacher special. Okay, so
nips and glowy things.
There you go.
It's the burlesque show waiting to happen.
Sounds like a fun time in Vegas.
Yeah, dude. Seriously.
But okay, Spider-Man, another one that when he the whatever the fourth one, I guess, the one that went back.
The Amazing Spider-Man.
The Amazing Spider-Man was a reboot.
Was very good.
And you have to kind of delineate there between when you want to call something a reboot versus just a sequel. And the first 5 Batman films were all sequels.
Yes.
The Christian Bale Batman was not intended at all to continue the first 5 movies.
No.
It was a reboot. It was intended to start over. Your first 3 Spider-Man films were intended to follow one another. They were not intended to start over. And even with the James Bonds, they're all kind of intended to be
continuing
sequels.
The story.
But at the same time, not in Casino Royale.
That's
the
true.
first Daniel
Casino
Craig
Royale
was basically an origin story.
Prequel, though.
Is a prequel, yeah.
Yeah, so that one, it almost doesn't really, it almost really doesn't fit a category because I would say that
prequel isn't a remake, though.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
so
true.
this is part of the issue. But I guess the grander question I have about all this is: do we need to stop getting angry? Do we need to have kind of reach a Zen awareness of the fact that everything we love or hated will at some point in the future, they will make an X-Men movie in the not too distant future, probably 20 years, that has a different Wolverine. Because Hugh Jackman can't play Wolverine forever.
I don't know. I think if he kept up with his regimen,
I was thinking that same thing.
CGI, yeah.
I think Hugh Jackman for the next 150 years.
Well, see, but that's funny because they redid Tron, and they CGI'd faces or
Jeff Bridges,
but that Tron that was not intended to be a reboot. That was a sequel.
Yep.
It was
that is a very blurred line on reboot versus sequel.
Reimagine.
Because I feel like they did, in a way, want to reboot the Tron universe.
They kind of did.
Might have wanted to.
You could have seen Tron Legacy.
Standalone.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Without seeing the first one, and you wouldn't be too lost.
You might not have been too lost, but some of the Jeff Bridges references to the first film wouldn't have made any sense.
Yeah.
You're like, why is Flynn... Why does Flynn matter to this universe?
Well, but they explain all that. They explain some of it. He's the creator, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right. But they kind of glossed over the original. Like, there were some references to the original Tron and how he turned into whatever the black
It was like at the very beginning, they explained, just in like a voiceover, my dad disappeared one day.
Yeah.
They're like, last time on Tron.
Last time on Tron. It's almost that bad.
But I think what you were saying, you probably could have stopped halfway there when you said, do we think that they should just stop? Yes, they should just stop.
They should.
Because it
creates some new stuff.
The issue...
The love of all that's holy.
Yeah, the thing with a reboot is it's been done. It's like all the work's done for you, and you're like, I'm just going to slap some new people in there, and we'll just make the same movie, and no one will know.
But see, there you go. You say they should just stop. So should Nolan and Bale never have gotten together and we had Batman? Should, or is
that different than saying...
Well, okay, let me take it back.
RoboCop.
Reboots are
I'm excited about RoboCop.
Reboots are not so bad. Okay, if you completely start over, that's one thing. To take Star Trek, as much as I wasn't a huge fan of the first film, which people were, to start over is okay. To divorce yourself from what came before and say, we're going to go down a new path. That's fine. Dark Knight did that. This is the shit that happened before that you have, still kind of have a bad taste in your mouth. We're going this way.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it right. To completely just remake a movie. Red Dawn, remake.
Mm-hmm.
RoboCop looks like a remake. It doesn't look like a reboot. There were already 3 RoboCops.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, the remakes don't need to occur.
I think I like some of the Universal players. Like, that they'll go into an idea and then they want to change something or something because it doesn't fit their motivations or their lore or something like that, and they like playing around in that universe. There's a lot of writers that do that with, like, movie tie-in books or, expanded universe books. Well, they'll kind of play around with the universe just to get their taste and feel of what it's like to either write a Star Wars book or a Robotech or something along those lines, whatever. So I think film guys like that, where it's something they grew up with, and they've always had this desire because it's what got them into filmmaking in the first place, and maybe that's why it's like they're trying to pay homage to somebody who maybe have gotten them into filming.
I hope to God we don't see a remake of Star Wars 4, 5, 6. Will it happen someday?
I would actually, I think I would be okay, actually, if Disney came out and said, the next Star Wars movie is going to be a reboot of the Star Wars universe.
I think I would be okay with that.
I think I would be okay with that. And I would use Star Trek as the example. People with Star Trek fans, are canon obsessed.
Yes.
Because, Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Janeway, there's a reason that things, when you get far enough away from the beginning, it's kind of like Mass Effect 4 has to be a little bit of a restart because so many decisions have been made in Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3 that if you try to reconcile all those decisions with the new story, you're going to be in trouble.
So should they just retell the story again with a slightly different flavor?
Well, but see, that's the thing, is that like Star Trek, the most recent movie with Chris Pine, I don't know why I picked him instead of Zoe Saldana, but anyways, so
a dreamy Chris Hemsworth.
So, but that was that worked really well to say we acknowledge there was this other universe, and we respect that universe, but we're going to do something that is really different, but going to be true to the original big themes of it.
So they're going to boldly go where Star Trek hasn't gone before.
Well, yeah, I mean a little bit more of a serious tone while still keeping some of the humor. Like, so Star Wars, if they were like, midichlorians can go F themselves,
right,
I think we'd all be in favor of that.
Yeah.
They said, we're going to make the Force a force again, as opposed to whatever it was. And we can still have all these different things.
Yeah.
So, this is why I say I think maybe...
But that goes back to what I was saying before with fixing lore, things that you didn't like about it. They put their own little spin on it. Certain people who are promoting that kind of thing and they want to direct that. Like, I don't know who's directing RoboCop, but I'm excited about it because it looks good. It's like a remodern version of RoboCop. And with special effects these days, and CGI, they're going to make it look a little bit less cheesy 80s. I grew up with RoboCop, so I enjoy the storyline.
I'm not going to be happy if somebody doesn't fall into toxic waste and walk half screaming and melting across.
Yes.
So, but, okay, so there we go. Should we just say, let's judge everything that happens based on what the movie or the show or whatever it is. Let's just judge it as it stands alone. When Ben Affleck comes up as...
You're pot committed,
should we just judge him as his own movie goes and not be so comparative and not be so angry? Same with Stargate. Yeah. Maybe we should just judge Stargate without thinking about how much we love SG-1.
You were bringing that up before and thought I was raging. I was raging just because you've got 20 years of lore and all kinds of other things.
Thought I was raging. Well, I was raging because
however,
Rick James over here.
However,
cocaine's a hell of a drug.
However, I will see it.
Oh yeah,
whatever second movie, third movie they decide to make, or if they're going to make a whole trilogy that comes after that to explain more things, it'll be fun, and maybe it'll get the sci-fi people happy and put more Stargate on TV. I mean, if there's a fan base for it that really wants that, sometimes you have to pay Peter to rob Paul. I don't know.
No,
Chris, are you content?
Did you reboot that saying there?
I think
so. Are you content with just
with the distinctions made? Reboots are not so bad as long as they are different enough from the original. If you wanted to say, we're going to remake Stargate, but we're going to slap Jason Statham in Kurt Russell's role and make the entire movie the exact same way it was when you saw it the first time, F that. No. No, you don't need to do that. That movie already got made back in the 90s. We don't need to see it again.
I see
just because, the 12-year-olds haven't seen it, and it'll be new to them.
I see. So your classification of remake, as in verbatim remake,
nearly verbatim,
different characters,
like I said, is exactly what RoboCop looks like. It looks like the old movie, with a new shine slapped on it and some different characters thrown in. The issue you run into with a remake,
it's a reboot, and I was reading Michael Keaton's career.
No.
Yes. Is when you do a remake, depending on the nature of the original movie, you lose a lot of the initial meaning of the movie. If you go back and look at, like I said, Red Dawn, the original Red Dawn came out in, the 80s? When there was a legitimate worry that, we might be invaded by Cuba or Russia or something like that.
It was time relevant.
It was time relevant. The newer one, North Korea, for real?
Is going to invade?
Yeah. No. No. Thanks. And then to have it come out at almost the exact same time as Homefront? Homefront, the game version?
So would it have made more sense if, let's say, but 15 years from now, China is a superpower that we start getting into another Cold War with China about, and they redo Red Dawn to be... because that would kind of make a little bit more sense.
It would make a little more sense, but it would still be a movie that's already been done.
Yeah.
Night of the Living Dead, the very original black and white George Romero Night of the Living Dead, dealt with racial themes, I believe. So when they remade them repeatedly, they were still kind of there, but they weren't as prevalent back in when the original came out. RoboCop, for example, was made to kind of as a statement on the urban decay going on in some of the major cities, and that we were going to need this RoboCop to come in and save the day.
In their defense, Detroit kind of does.
Yeah. It needs a RoboCop right now.
Yeah. But now, with the remake being almost exactly the same, especially on the technology level, 1980s tech in 2013, we can do a little better than that. So that's my issue with remakes is they try and take something that might have been relevant 20 or 30 years ago and make it relevant again today with the same message, and it doesn't work. When you end up with things, and I much as I hate to use this as an example, The Day the Earth Stood Still. The original black and white Day the Earth Stood Still and the remake with Keanu, face on a stick Reeves had completely different themes going on.
Whoa.
So it wasn't great, but it was at least mildly more acceptable because it had been shifted to be more of a, this is relevant now, versus making something that's completely not relevant now, and we'll just slap it in right now and people will still, accept it.
Right. We need to pump out movies, so what can we dig out of the archives and put fresh faces in?
Yeah.
I feel, and this is now moving on to a new subject, I feel like fresh faces are what we are getting right now with smartphones. And I don't know if you feel the same way. I know that you've got an opinion on that, but I guess at this point, what do we need to see in smartphones, Ryan, that actually is more than just a fresh face? That's actually something new.
I think we need to see the bat phone.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm so happy you guys recognized it.
Where's Commissioner Gordon when you need him?
Right. There is a bat phone on the screen behind us for those listening or watching. And you're trying to figure out what that is.
Commissioner Gordon.
So, we've been seeing new phones come out, and, if you look at 10 years ago versus now, holy cow, phones used to just do calling, and if you look back 20 years ago, really all they did was just calling, and then, 10 years ago they were starting to get into texting, but really it was just like teens that figured out T9 word, and they were like on little, razors and whatnot.
Yeah.
You still have that phone, don't you?
No.
Anyway.
How's that flip phone working out for you?
No. And then there was like the smartphone revolution, sort of mid-2000s to now.
Yeah.
And it's really taken off. What you can do with a smartphone now is huge. The question is, we've kind of gone through this bubble now. Really, with Apple just this past week coming out with their next gen of the 5C, the iPhone 5C, and the 5S.
Yes, yeah.
What else are they adding to this? And not that we need to get into what did they add to the iPhone 5C and the 5S, because to be honest, I really don't care. What I'm saying is, what is the next gen of phone really going to do that isn't already covered?
Yeah.
And the big things that I want to see are sort of not huge features that I want added. I just want massive refinement of what we've already got. Right now, versus 10 years ago, cell phone batteries last you about a day. That pisses me off. I want a phone has battery technology not been improved enough? And maybe the answer is yes, but we're doing so much more with the phones now that, the battery is draining at the same rate. But I want a phone battery that lasts me a week. I mean, let me go 3 days without a wall plug and be okay.
You can get that kind of stuff, but you
gotta buy another gadget for it.
Right, or, like on top of that with sleeves, they've got ideas, but I think what they're trying to go for, and what Apple has started with that whole thing, is trying to get it super small and thin.
Yeah.
So everybody likes to keep them in their pocket. But if you got something that was maybe a half-inch thicker, would you legitimately carry like a brickier phone?
I wouldn't, and that's why I go with a very minimalistic. I go with a very minimalistic, just plastic case. It's pretty thin around my phone in case I drop it or whatever. Okay, if it bends the frame because I dropped it from 8 feet versus 2 feet or whatever, if it slips out of my pocket while I'm sitting here,
right,
and it hits if it hit concrete, it would chip or crack my case, but not really do anything to my phone. Right? So that's what I prefer, is the very minimalistic case, instead of, I know you can get like otter boxes that have batteries built in. I know you can get all this stuff that either ruggedizes your phone or adds in, a battery that makes it last for 3 days. That's crap. I'm not having a car with better gas, or better range by towing behind me a gas station. You know what I mean? Like it's got to be practical as well. It's got to fit the dimensions. Right. It's got to fit the dimensions of what you expect a phone to be.
This is my issue, though. That's not really next generation. It's really not. Because a better battery life is simply an improvement on a current feature.
Well, that's what I'm saying. A larger next gen, I want to improve the features we already have.
Okay, but see, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's not really next gen, then. That's simply just because from the Razor to the iPhone is a new generation. The capability is a massive jump. So all we're seeing right now with smartphones is different display sizes, different apps, maybe a better camera, maybe a battery life that lasts 10 extra hours if we're lucky, something like that. We haven't really seen, since the first touchscreen, since the first iPhone, we have not seen a true next generation of smartphone.
Well, we just keep on
improving current things,
and
they add to it as well.
Right. I guess if we're talking about features, because there is,
are you talking about software features or hardware features?
Well, what I'm going to talk about is a hardware feature.
Okay.
The whole point of the smartphone was consolidating devices.
Correct.
Right? You can now game on your. I mean, yes, you could play Bubbles on your Razor if you really wanted to.
Snake.
Right, Snake.
Play the crap out of Snake.
Whatever.
Hey, I had an awesome golf game on my Razor.
Yeah. Freaking high score on Centipede. All right.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, one of the things that I still find myself carrying around is USB thumb drives and pocket hard drives. Right. Storage has gotten ridiculously small as of late. Like the past 2 years, storage has gotten really small. You guys are kind of having a moment over there.
Well, I feel that the issue that what you're requesting here may have already been filled by a different market. Your need for additional storage space could probably be alleviated if you had a phone that, I don't know, you could open and slide in a memory card or...
Okay, so you're referring... yeah, sure. So you're referring to the card slot that exists in all the Android and even Windows mobiles.
Right, or even not to throw back to the Kickstarter there.
But yeah, I mean...
Even if you don't have it, right there.
I don't have the ability to put a...
Sure, but I'm not talking about a small amount of storage. I mean, I already have a 64 gig phone, right? So I'm talking...
It's another 64 gigs.
Okay, so that's not enough. I'm talking, if they give me another 10 hours of battery, that's not enough. I'm talking... Next gen on this is you gotta take a huge leap for me to even recognize that you've done something.
So you're talking...
I'm talking terabyte, 2 terabyte, 3 terabytes in your phone, so you don't have to worry about storage. You don't even have to worry about it because it's so much space right now. Now, 5 years from now, we'll be like, what the hell am I gonna do with
1 terabyte ought to be enough for anybody.
Didn't they say that about like 10 megabytes? I mean,
640K.
Like, you're going like super user on some of those things. Like the common person has maybe 6 to 10 gigs of actual MP3s that they would put on their phone if need be. But you have all these streaming services now that you don't need that for. So that's where these manufacturers are trying to get more money for their device by increasing it by minute amounts of money. But it's each like doubling of the amount of storage in your device is like $100 each time.
Right.
And that makes no sense to me because that storage is fixed and those costs have been going down a lot.
Well, let me say this. I have been on the Android iPhone side for reasons whether they're right or whatever, but I've been on the iPhone side basically since ditching my Windows brick smartphone. Yes, I know. Yeah. Forever ago. I think it was like 2004 or whatever. So I switched over and have stayed iPhone, for good, worse, or whatever.
But you're bought in.
Right.
At this point, you've got an app library that you've bought into.
Right. I'm comfortable using it. Everything works the way I want it to.
Right.
It just works for me. I would say that if an Android phone came out and had a 2 terabyte hard drive in it, right, that would make me really consider. If an Android phone came out and said, our phone lasts 5 frigging days on its battery, that would really make me consider. And I would jump the smartphone fence on some of these big things, and that's why I think they're game changers.
And it can't look like something Zach Morris would carry.
Right.
Hello! Freaking huge
brick phone.
Right.
I get what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. Maybe in future iterations where they've got, with laptops getting super small, and MacBook Airs and things are super small and they've gone to solid state drives. Perhaps because they've got those micro PCI slot solid state drives, they might be able to put something like that inside of a phone.
They've already got drives that are well. I mean, the tech to make a phone do what it does is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Your biggest piece of equipment in the phone is the battery, which fills up all available extra room, and the screen. That's it.
That's it. Right. Everything else is super small.
If they can figure out how, if you've seen some of these little super teeny tiny storage that's like, half a terabyte on little tiny guy, they can find room in the phone. It's just too expensive right now.
That's just it. That's cost.
What other things? So I've said at least 2 or 3 things that I really want to see in what I consider to be next gen. Whether you consider that really a next generation or not is the next thing. But what do you think? Are we going? Is it going to specialize, or what do you guys think will be in the next gen?
Something, I think flexible. I think that it should be, you could virtually roll it up. Like maybe your phone is a tube and you just pull it out. Like it slides open, and then the screen, if you want it to be a larger screen, you just pull it out further. Something really, we're talking about crazy, but they have flexible displays now. That's just hitting the market. So that's an example of something I would consider truly next gen, would be having a phone that
looks like a Roman scroll, and you just yes.
But in a way, actually, that makes a ton of sense. If your phone,
you're like, helmet
phone. You're making fun about it, but if you had a phone the size of your iPhone that you could flip up and then pull out, you'd have an iPad-sized display that you could carry around in your pocket.
Somewhere at Nintendo, they just had an idea for a Nintendo 4DS. They're like, wait for it.
But again, that is something that would truly be revolutionary because we have maxed our display size capacity. We might as well all just strap iPads to our chest if they're going to go any larger with display size. What's the nickname for them? When the phone has such a large display.
Phablet?
It's like, phablet. Thank you. Yeah, we are. We're at the point of phablet. So in order to have a larger display, they have to find some way of doing that, and that's my proposition. Maybe there's a more brilliant one out there. I in Total Recall the remake.
Whoa. That was not quite a remake. Not quite the same plot. Did he ever go to Mars?
That is true.
Good point. Interesting. Total Remake, the
reimagination.
Reimagining.
The redo. He had a phone that was actually surgically implanted into his hand, and then he could bring up the whole thing on a piece of glass just by putting his hand against it. So, but actually,
Smart, didn't they?
In a way, that looks ridiculous.
The Inspector Gadget phone?
Really, putting your hand up, putting your hand up to your head.
Any more ridiculous than a Bluetooth headset?
Well, Bluetooth, that's a totally different story there. But putting your hand up like that looks silly. Looks like Google Glass silly. So I'm not sure, but at the same time, the fact that it is surgically implanted, you'd have to assume that it runs off of like organic matrix style energy, which would be truly next gen.
That could be interesting if you had to reboot your phone.
You're right with like the wearable tech. I think it would be. Hang on, you gotta do the Vulcan neck bend.
Every time you crack your knuckles, you butt dial.
Hold on, my reception's going bad.
You just break my hand. Oh, that's much better.
We fold this the other way, going through a tunnel.
But like, yeah, you're right. Going maybe towards wearable tech would be good. Like the watch type thing. I'm kickstarting a watch that's got a 3G signal on it and things like that. And it's
thought of the watch. All it does remind me of that one kid that you went to school with that had the calculator watch.
Yeah,
you had a calculator watch, didn't you, Josh? Just admit it.
I might have had it. It was the best invention ever.
Like the watches that had like the Super Mario Brothers on that you could friggin' play.
Those are
awesome.
Didn't you have a watch that had?
Yeah, I had a Sony
touchscreen.
Yeah.
I noticed you're not wearing it.
Well.
Old tech.
I lost
old
that.
Tech.
No, so is it ridiculous? Yes. It's going to be probably about the same size as this, though. And it will have a touchscreen. And
do you think that's going to be enough real estate, even at ridiculous like Retina display levels?
But here's the cool part about this, right? So it's got a camera, kind of like the Samsung Gear or whatever, but it's got a camera. I could have, had it been funded and I had gotten that phone or device, even if it was just Android and not actually tied to making a phone call or whatever. I could have recorded something where, I would not have normally taken my phone. I didn't take my phone on my vacation jet ski tour of Marco Island. But had I been able to capture us like kind of tooling around with these dolphins and becoming one with the pod, I would have been able to videotape this. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just goes to a place where I could not have been able to have my phone to capture that moment. Or some sort of specific, ridiculously expensive underwater or waterproof camera would have taken. Because then I would have had to, futz with it. Here, it would have just been right here, bam, 720p video recording of this whole thing.
That's true.
So, is it niche? Yeah, it's very niche. But, is that kind of a cool thing to have? I don't know. I mean, it's wave of future type stuff with wearable, trackable tech where you're...
So you think Google Glass is going to be huge?
I think if it becomes more affordable... You think it's going to be
like Gen 2?
Yeah.
Because right now it kind of...
There are so many people upset with this.
There's a difference between looking nerdy, right, and then looking really dorky.
Like punch-worthy?
Dorky. Like nerdy is kind of chic, right? Like
Yeah. No, geek chic. Yeah,
right. You can be really smart and just, whatever. So who cares if you're not wearing, like, Abercrombie shit or whatever. But if there's dorky, right, where even nerds will kind of criticize each other. They're like,
a little bit.
Good Lord.
Back in the day, if you had a, oh my God, before the smartphone, the tablet, like a tablet PC, with the little stylus and everything.
Yeah,
it was pressing the dorky buttons a little bit. But now everybody has basically a tablet PC in their pocket. So, I mean,
it is interesting how, like, I remember HP coming out with that tablet where it actually separated, right? And everybody was like, that was a terrible idea. Like, I remember reading like reviews from like Wall Street Journal and things like, what were they thinking? You can leave half your computer behind? What were they thinking? And now
it's
that's all that
you get a keyboard for your iPad that it snaps in there and you can type on.
I know, you see all this stuff and you're like,
the whole Asus Transformer line is like a tablet and then click netbook. That's
at just different times, I suppose. So,
I think so.
Tech will come in and catch on at different points.
I think Josh is probably right that the next generation of like phone tech is probably going to be wearable. I think the Google Glass is still too young. You kind of have that stigma of, everybody expects kind of the Terminator, heads-up display thing going on where, you can see stuff scrolling in front of you and shit like that. And I don't think it's going to be quite that awesome. But will it, will the next version
that is like, are they just pervy people that are recording everybody, every little nuance.
You got people that are going to be pissed off. But the thing with the tablet watches, unless there's some amazing thing that the tablet watch can do, are you gonna to take pictures? Are you gonna be like, yeah, we're in the dolphin pod?
Yeah, I guess.
Hey, I'm getting a phone call. Hold on. Yeah,
well, and that's the thing.
It's like Staughton's tube. I just want to be like, hello. Yeah, I'm doing great. But yeah, I mean, unless there's some sort of awesome interface or some way, as much as I hate Bluetooth headsets, if your watch could link up with your Bluetooth headset,
it does.
And then,
It does, Chris.
It does.
Jackass.
Well, it's got Bluetooth, it's got Wi-Fi.
But it's got that whole Bluetooth headset thing going against it, so I refuse to acknowledge that it exists.
Because they walk down the street, you're going to get boxed in the ear.
Yeah, somebody's going to come up and be like...
They need to find a way to make the Bluetooth headset look either invisible or cool.
Yeah. And you would think you should be able to get
with the
microphone
aids and stuff
small
that they've got small enough things where you could
like a Bluetooth.
Yeah, but I think the problem isn't that the hearing part. I think the problem is the voice detection part.
But even then, if you could get
battery life,
that's true.
I mean, I guess you'd have to look at the tech. But if you
maybe
could do something,
nasal implant is just like right here, so it picks up everything. You're
in your tooth, right? So it's a hearing aid and like a tooth cap.
That will work out perfectly. And then when you're like talking to somebody and you're like, are you eating Doritos while I'm talking to you? And they're like, no.
No, not at all. I'm talking to you. I'm going through a tunnel.
No, I want to buy this bag of Sun Chips.
So
I think the next gen is going to be wearable tech, but I think the wearable tech still has a few hurdles to get over before it's mainstream acceptance.
That's true. Yeah, I'll give you that.
Okay, so what about like tricorder stuff? You think it's gonna like boom in a certain area like medical, where your phone starts doing very specific stuff that could be universally, cool? Like a lot of people hurt themselves around you. If you had something that could do very quick diagnostics,
Yeah, I think that
they would require an infrastructure of like some sort of everybody gets some sort of implant. Then to be able to read
that is interesting, though, because if they did develop a basically handheld medical scanner, why couldn't it also exist? Because the only difference between an iPad Touch and an iPhone is basically the cellular components plus the phone app. So you've got a little bit of hardware plus the app, basically, that turns it into a phone.
Right. Yeah.
So with this, all they would need would be the hardware that would be the medical scanning device, which, quite frankly, I bet that would be relatively easy to do with a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then just an app to run it all.
What you'll run into with that, I think, is for general consumption, not to offend anyone, but people in general are stupid. I don't mean that. I mean that in the least offensive way possible. That everyone is.
Now wait, why did you look directly at Staughton when you were like
most offensive way possible? Hat Malum, you.
He looked directly at.
I'm like Staughton. People. I don't mean to insult anyone, especially you. No, I'm just kidding. But I mean, you already have instances. People have a cough and they go to Google and determine that they have terminal cancer because they have a cough. If I've got a tricorder that I can now buy commercially, I'm like, oh, good, it's a brain tumor.
But there is
my arm hurts.
I know this is awful, but there is no reason there couldn't be an ultrasound machine on there that you could perform a mammography or an X-ray scanner so that you could see if that bone is actually broken.
The issue with an X-ray scanner is
it's a tumor. It's a tumor. So we know.
The X-ray scanner specifically, X-rays are dangerous enough that they make you wear a giant lead outfit.
I realize that. I'm speaking in relative terms here, is that to be able to see internally from your phone, if you want to call it that, would be a dramatic leap forward. And undoubtedly,
I'm sure there's people working on stuff like that.
Chris would just sit at his desk all day and take pictures of Ryan's butt through the clothes.
I would. I'd be like, oh, X-ray mode's working. Yeah.
What is going on?
Okay, so
taking a really weird generation of phones that I don't want.
Okay. So, what's interesting is that we are demanding more and more and more to the point of apparently nude medical technology from our phones. Yes. But in other industries, gaming, they're actually giving us less. And for this example, we will turn to Chris, who will tell us about the crap DS, 2DS.
Yeah, Nintendo recently released the 2DS, which is basically a 3DS that no longer folds in half and can't do 3D. As you can see there,
it looks like it'll fit in my pocket.
It should fit
Speaking
quite nicely
tablets.
into your pocket.
Yes.
Because you know what I was missing with my tablet was 2 screens.
Right?
I'm like, why isn't there a break in the middle?
You could have
so I could have 2 screens.
What was that, the Kyocera Echo?
With the screen on the phone, and then you fold up, and there's another screen.
Open, and there was a second screen, and you were just like, screen.
The issue I have with the 2DS is you can already buy a 3DS. So let's say, okay, the market for a 2DS is young kids that you can't trust with a 3DS. But when they get older, they're gonna want a 3DS. So not only has Nintendo convinced you to buy a 3DS where you could just turn off the 3D and let them play it as a younger kid, they've now got you on the hook with a 2DS and a 3DS in a few years. Another one that's not quite as bad is...
What's the price point on this?
I believe the 2DS is $100.
No, I thought it was $199. We probably should have researched
$130 or $140, something like that.
So $50 less then? This is $180 for a 3DS, right?
I think so.
Something like that.
So
$170 is what I spent.
less.
So $50 less that you're then going to spend in a few years.
Well, the original price was what, like $250 when it first came out?
Yeah, it was almost console level.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy.
And actually, if you look at the Wii ended up being cheaper than that in the end.
Yeah.
So really, the 2DS kind of seems like Nintendo grasping at something they can convince you to buy to give them money. We know Wii U was kind of a failure. With 3DS isn't doing so great. Here's a really cheap one. You should buy that. Please buy it.
Is this the iPhone 5C?
The iPhone 5C.
Is that what this is?
It depends. Does it come in new, fantastic...
Oh, wait, it's bigger size now.
Neon colors?
Bigger size, 0 more features. In fact, -1 features.
Minus 2 features. No 3D and no folding in half, so you can actually...
Well, the 3DS, I think it's doing pretty well, from what I've heard.
It is doing pretty well.
Console-wise, they're...
Was this
for portable?
Yeah. What's the 2DS warranty?
I don't know who this is actually appealing to.
The other one, which is actually not a terrible idea, but seems like, from what I've been reading, seems like it doesn't have a whole lot of people backing it, is Sony has produced is it Vita TV?
Vita TV.
They basically took a Vita, stripped out all the interface components so that it's just a box with cords going out of it that you can plug into a TV, and it basically plays Vita games, some PSP games, and some PlayStation 1 games.
It looks about the size of an Android device. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not...
Maybe even
kind of like an Ouya?
It looked like it was actually smaller than the controller itself. Like
it was.
DualShock controller.
It was. It's very thin. The idea is it's being released in Japan right now, and they're basically all but saying, yes, it's coming to the States. It's just not coming this year. So, $100. $100.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you can take your... I'm guessing the people that this is marketed to have either some sort of Sony product already, but maybe not. If you do already have Sony products, you're in luck because your DualShock 3 controllers will work on it, so you don't need to buy anything extra for it.
Nice.
HDMI cable plugs right into this thing. It goes out to a TV. Very low power consumption.
One of the impressive features I'd seen was if you, it will pair with, I believe it will pair with the PlayStation 4, so that if the PlayStation 4 is in one room hooked up to a TV, and you take the Vita TV to a different room, it will do like the Vita game streaming feature, so you could play your PlayStation 4 game on a TV in a completely different room just because you have this Vita TV hooked up.
Right.
Tommy goes in the basement.
No. Let's say it's your family has enough to buy one PlayStation 4, right? So it's hooked up to the main TV or whatever.
Right.
So this is the kind of thing that $100 and Timmy can go play his games up on his TV in his room.
Your 13-year-old can go upstairs and play Call of Duty, which he shouldn't be playing anyway.
Yeah, maybe not. Still. But anyway, I find it really interesting because the Vita itself, the handheld for the Vita, hasn't really been stellar as far as getting off
understatement of the podcast.
Well, Nintendo's just been annihilating it, and Vita hasn't been doing as well as even the PSP did.
Right.
You know, PSP did fairly well. Now,
pretty well.
Not saying the Vita doesn't have cool tech.
That's true.
You know, with the touchscreen on the back, and the interface it has for it, it does sell technology. You know, you can get like a 3G unit in it, and I'm not sure whether that's going to be included in the. I don't know whether you can get cell for the
Vita TV.
Yeah, but instantly,
I wouldn't think so. I think it tends to be stationary,
Wi-Fi only kind of thing.
Well, instantly you'll have access to all PS1 games, all PSP games, and a good majority of the Vita games. Now, the only ones that they say currently you can't play are the ones that explicitly use the touchscreen features of the Vita. So if they have that, there's no point. It won't be on the market for Vita TV.
Gotcha.
But it's something like 1,300 games at launch, $100. There's a lot of exclusives there that would be good to play, I think.
My only question there, which I didn't see and maybe I just overlooked it, yes, it can play PS1 games and PSP games, but does it not have an optical drive? These are games that you bought off the market.
Yes.
So if you have a huge collection of PS1 games, congratulations, you get to rebuy them all to play them on your Vita TV.
Yeah, unclear yet how that's going to work, but I'm guessing you're right. You've got to own the digital rights to it, not
to tangent off too badly. That's kind of where Nintendo is beating Sony with their handhelds. You know, Sony
not with this guy though.
No, not with this guy. Nintendo. You know, they came out with the Game Boy, they came out with the Game Boy Advance, they came out with the Game Boy Color. All the games worked. They come out with the DS, the 3DS, and, you know, this horror. All the games, for the most part, work.
Was there another R in there? Okay, anyway.
With Sony, they came out with the PSP, proprietary, you know, UMD format. They come out with the Vita. No optical drive whatsoever. Those games you bought for your PSP that you enjoyed playing, I'm sure you enjoyed playing all 2 of them. Now you can rebuy them in the Vita store if you'd like to play them again. So, you know, you run that risk when you cut people off. But yeah, I think this is where this is going to run into issue is it's great that it can play this stuff, but if you're already, you know, a diehard Sony fan, you've probably got a PS1 and a huge library. You might already have a Vita. This isn't going to do you any good.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing is going to be I think this is going to do more good for the Vita market. You know, Vita TV is going to do more good for Vita than the Vita did. You know, I mean, that sounds crazy.
I can't disagree with that.
But I think, you know, when you look at it, the Vita was kind of an expensive unit. You know, versus Vita TV, if it really does come to the States at $100. I mean, it competes directly with Ouya now. Yeah. Everybody was
that's true.
Was excited about the Ouya at $99 because you could get into this stuff. Now, the games aren't going to be as cheap as the Ouya.
That's true. Are they going to work it as a media extender as well? Does that?
Yeah. It will do all
you can exactly do like an Ouya. To be honest,
right? You can run the Vita Facebook app off of it. You can run Netflix. You can run all your other media streaming. They're saying that Gaikai is going to work on it, which will be interesting when that comes out. Now, that's kind of the big, checks in the mail on how cool Gaikai is going to be. Don't know. Could be awesome. Mm-hmm. Could be not as good as we are being told. Don't know. But, that's one good move on Sony's part here, because this is releasing in Japan before the end of the year. Wow. November it releases.
Yeah, this is the first thing I feel that Sony's done that was like a little bit outside the box good. This is the 2DS is not outside the box really. It's basically it's a 3DS, and I hate to be mean about it. It's a 3DS for poor people. If you have the
and
extra,
not even if it's only $50 off.
Well, yeah, it's between 50 and 100 or something like that. And even if they drop the price point to below $100, it's
is that
still,
your price point though? Like,
if this was $60 or $75, it would totally make sense to me.
Right.
Yeah.
At that would make sense. Versus 180. I don't get it.
Your price point don't. Yeah. I think more people would spend $100 or less, and then 200 is reaching that. Would you spend it on something?
Yeah.
So I went out and in the very distant past bought a Game Boy Advance like after the when the DS had come out, I went back and bought a Game Boy Advance and Final Fantasy VI for Game Boy Advance.
Nice.
Just because I wanted to play that one game. That's all I went. I went to GameStop and I bought that, the game. Period. And I was happy. Yep. I can almost imagine myself doing something similar with Vita TV, where I'm like, I really miss this specific PlayStation 1 game, or who knows, maybe down the road they'll adapt this to something else, so that I can then go back and play some of those classics that I remember at a dirt cheap price. I can imagine that happening with this, and maybe especially with, like you talked about, your Netflix account can work on it, things like that. Like that's awfully cool from a standpoint of, if you simply just put it down, plug it in, and go. That's almost easier than if you have to, go to a strange TV with your phone or whatever other device that you're running. You have a Netflix account on. It's easier to hook up, you could say.
Yeah. So you don't when you travel, you don't take your whole Xbox with you. You don't take your whole PlayStation with you. So you can watch your Netflix.
Yeah.
But if you had something that was roughly the size of your phone,
that you could just throw in.
Right, because I don't also take the HDMI out from my phone to a TV either.
Exactly.
Because it doesn't do 1080.
Yeah, okay.
Versus this device does. The Vita TV does do 1080. I believe it's 1080i. I don't think it does 1080p, but I mean, most Netflix content is 720 anyway.
Yeah.
So what we've established here is that there is a market for the Vita. Well, not the Vita, but the Vita. There's no market for the Vita. But Vita TV, there's a market for it. For the 2DS, there's...
For their price.
I think we can't imagine what the market is.
Yeah, at the current price point, there is no market for it. If they were to cut it in half, like you said, if they dropped it to $50 or $75, and you said, my kid's going to destroy a 3DS, if they destroy this thing, big whoop, I'm out $50.
If this thing was nerfed too, you know what I'm talking about? Like if it was almost
really flimsy, plasticky, that kind of thing.
No, if like all the edges
like rounded
were like
rubber edges and stuff like that. So if you drop it bounces a little bit.
Right, then I get it, because then it is less likely to break.
Right.
You get it for your
kids.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
For like,
so it's a cheaper price point.
4 to 7.
You pretty much can't break it. Okay, then I get it. You don't want it flipping, because that's one thing that could go wrong.
Bust the hinges. Yeah.
But I mean, it's still hard plastic. I mean, it's not rubberized. I mean, maybe they are going to make accessories for this thing, but you can do that for the 3DS as well.
Yeah.
So the thing I didn't get about this, another thing I didn't get, why wasn't this just the DS2? Why didn't they make another DS? Because the DS right now, right, there was the DS,
like
and there was a 3DS.
DS.
Well, why didn't they do a DS2? So it's still dual screen. It's way the hell cheaper than a 3DS.
Right.
It would have come out at a price point less than this guy.
The DS still had Game Boy Advance games you could still play on.
And I think that would be even bigger.
But 3DS did not. It took it away.
Yeah.
So I still have my DS so I can play all those old school games.
Is Microsoft making the right decision by apparently, at least at this point, who knows, because things can change on the turn of a dime, drop of a dime, mixing my metaphors. Are they making the right decision by staying out of this kind of like, hey, look at the cheap thing we have battle?
I don't know. I think they're trying to stay out of portable gaming because they've got, their own tablets and their own, the laptops and things that they can use for their stuff. But Surface RT it's not that good.
See, that's interesting because there's a commercial that just started up that I was watching today where they've got like a touchscreen Halo, on like a tablet. It's Spartan Assault or something like that. It's like a top-down shooter. It's got it's just a little bit like, it's almost to the point where it's like
they're trying
to tap into something here.
Well, they've done smart glass, right?
I think we've stopped recording.
Fuck.
All right. So anyway, the Vita, Vita TV. I think it's a pretty good move by Sony in all the features it brings into the table. Nintendo, I have no idea what they're doing with this. I think it would have had to go much cheaper for this to really hit a mass audience.
Yeah.
The Vita TV, I really do think that it's gonna do really good things. You know, probably one of the best things that Sony has done in a while as far as bringing stuff to market.
So then let's ask one final question. Is this the really important question? Would you consider buying this?
I think I would.
I would.
Vita TV? I would, as much as I'm not a super huge fan of Sony, I think I'd give it a chance. Just,
I mean, at $100.
At $100, I mean, yeah. I mean, you've got, you know, the Roku box, all the other little individual media boxes. If it's all that, deal. Plus, you know, Resident Evil, the early Final Fantasy games, all that stuff, why not?
This kind of tie a little bit with our phone discussion. If it can do that extra thing, you know, that all these other things are supposed to do. I mean, your phone can do all these extra things now. So if this can be the Roku box plus everything else, you know, including a gaming system, I think we can. Yeah. I think it's something we can combine that helps.
Yeah, I definitely do think that does that. And the one final thing was the Gaikai for Vita TV. It had they were saying that what it might be able to do is a streaming service where the games are able to be much more advanced than what can be processed locally because they're just streaming you video of what you're playing. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I've seen some pretty horrific input lag before, so maybe that's not a great idea.
But terrifying thought. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do any first person shooter like that. I don't think.
Got your tags.
But anyway, makes a hell of a lot more sense than the 2DS.
Lag switching? No, he's just on Gaikai. It's okay.
So, well, that's it for episode 3 of the Fairly Awesome Podcast. I hope that it was your magic number. If it was, or if it wasn't, we care about you, but, you know.
Except me, apparently.
Apparently not that much.
Yeah, just a little. So, tell us in the comments below what you thought. Let us know. You can go to YouTube. We really appreciate the thumbs up. Or go to facebook.com/fairlyawesomepodcast. Give us a like. You can see a lot of other content there. Follow us on Twitter at FAPcast, where Ryan is posting semi-nudes. Selfies.
I'm
they're
pretty
fantastic.
Sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah. So it does now.
Fans want it.
Now. The fans want to see it.
It's been demanded.
Yeah, sorry.
It's been kickstarted.
I've been hoarded out to FAPcast.
So anyways, thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you for episode 4 in a couple weeks.
Table whacking.
Table whacking.
Okay, we're going to start here.
Table whacking, good time.
What are you laughing at?
Nate, taking these ridiculous gulps. He's like,
okay, 5 seconds here.
Must choke someday. Okay.
5 seconds, goddammit.
Really?
You give it like 30.
The fucking giggle loop already? Yeah.
Nate's what it was.
Nate's not helping you.